In this tutorial, we're going to use Adobe Illustrator CC 2020 in order to go through Class Write a Book, Chapter 13, which is all about effects and graphic styles. So for this one, you're going to need the start and the end files. Let's go ahead and go into that start file. Let's do a window and a workspace and an essentials reset just to make sure we're all starting in the same place. Let's do a file save as, first initial, last name, _ Adobe Illustrator, Class Write a Book, Chapter 13. Make sure you're putting it in the right folder. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So for this one, we're going to use quite a few different items in order to use the appearance panel, which allows us to have multiple fills, shapes, strokes, and other effects going on with our publication and whatever we're creating. So let's go ahead and grab that selection tool and hit the dark gray section right here. Let's go over to our properties panel in appearance, and let's go ahead and pop open that properties panel. So you see when I pop that open, we've actually got quite a few different things going on. So let's go ahead now and play with some of these elements. So let's go here to the fill, and under fill, let's go ahead and double click it and change to the one called background. It's actually the last square on the swatches. And let's do an escape. So now it's kind of a neat peach color. And let's click the word 1 point in stroke. And let's go ahead and take that down to a 0 points. So we want no stroke at all. So let's just take that down to a no stroke. All right, so let's look at the visibility column over in the one that says drop shadow. So we turn that on and off. We can kind of see what's happening with that drop shadow. We might decide, hey, we don't like it at all. So let's go ahead and take that whole drop shadow layer and just drag it straight down into that trash can. So that's going to get rid of that drop shadow altogether. So it's a really easy way to get rid of some of the effects that we have going on. So let's go ahead and add another fill to that content. So with that background shape still selected, let's go to the bottom and do a add fill, new fill. It's the second button in on the bottom of the appearance panel. And go ahead and click it. It's going to go ahead and come in pink, which we don't necessarily want. So let's go ahead and click on this bottom one. Let's go ahead and click it a couple times. We're going to change it to one that is called crosses. So crosses is about the 5th one in. So we're actually going to be creating 2 different types of fills. Let's hit escape and get rid of that one. So we don't actually see the pattern that's coming through because we are that pattern is underneath. So if we close the eyeball off on that fill, we can go ahead and see those crosses there. Let's go ahead and make it visible again and do a select and a deselect. And in another step, we will go ahead and rearrange those in order to make it easier to see. Let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far. So the next thing we're going to do is add multiple strokes and fills to text. So let's go ahead and grab that type tool and click over here on Art Show. And if we click in here, we see it says in our appearance, it says no appearance. That refers to like the type of object that we have. So let's go ahead and see what happens if we hit it with the selection tool. With the selection tool, when we see it, we go ahead and we see its type. So now let's go ahead and while that object is selected, let's go ahead to that fill attribute. So let's go ahead and let's do a new fill button here at the bottom. And it's going to go ahead and make it black. We don't necessarily want it to be black. Let's go ahead and make it gravel beach instead. So let's click it, and gravel beach is next to the crosses, so it's about the middle of that swatches. And let's go ahead and say escape to hide those. Now let's go ahead and hit that disclosure triangle. If you don't already, you can already see it. Instead of the opacity being default, let's go ahead and make that opacity. We click on the opacity word. Let's go ahead and drop that down to 50%. I'm going to hit tab. And so it's going to make it a little less noticeable. And let's hit escape to hide that panel. At this point, let's go ahead and look at the stroke box. We're going to go ahead and play with the strokes. So let's go into our stroke here. And let's go ahead and make the stroke on that one green instead. So we made it no stroke. Let's go ahead and take this one text stroke to the one that's called, what do we call it? Text stroke. So it is the green right there. And let's go ahead and change our stroke weight. Let's do an escape. Let's bump that weight up to about 5 points. And I'm pretty happy with it. So when we're ready to do that, let's go ahead and add a new stroke at the bottom of that appearance panel. So we're actually going to add 2 strokes to it. So add new stroke. And on that second stroke, we're going to go ahead and change that. So new stroke, on that second stroke, let's go ahead and, here we go. Let's go ahead and change it to white. So now we have a white one over top of the green, and that's fine because in the end we're going to end up playing with the green shadow. So it's okay that you can't see it yet. Let's go ahead and click the word stroke right here, and where it says corner, let's go ahead and do round join option. So on the corner section is that round join. It's actually going to make it just, if I zoom in, just slightly more round. So if you look right at these little corners, we can see the white is round and the green is not. Let's go ahead and hit escape and hide that panel. So now let's go ahead and reorder some of these so we can see a little bit different. I'm going to control minus and zoom back out. Let's go ahead and go into my appearance panel, and let's click to the eye next to the white stroke. Turn it on and off temporarily. And let's go ahead and grab that green stroke and take it below the word characters. So let's grab that green stroke and grab it and take it below characters. So now it's going to go ahead and be below characters. So when we turn that white back on, the white is still over top, and we can see the green is going to be on the characters again. So let's go ahead now and reorder a few more things. Let's grab the box here where we have our fill, and let's take that pinkish fill and drag it down below the fill for the crosses. So now we're going to go ahead and get that pattern up there on top. Let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far, and a select and a deselect just in case. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and use live effects. In most instances, the effects alter the appearance of an object without changing that artwork. And we've got 2 types of effects in Illustrator. One's vector effects and one's raster. So we know vector is based on mathematics. We know that raster is actually going to create pixels. So when we go in and play with these, we're going to do some of each. So let's go ahead and do a view fit artboard window. And with the selection tool, let's go ahead and grab our paintbrush. And we're going to go ahead and change that paintbrush just a little bit. So we're going to go into our Add New Effect button at the bottom of the appearance panel, so FX. And what we want to do is do stylize here at the top. And we want drop shadow. You're going to notice they're stylized in 2 places. The top one is Illustrator effects, the bottom one is Photoshop. We want the Illustrator. And let's go ahead and do a drop shadow. Let's leave our mode as multiply. Our opacity should be 50. I'm going to do a tab. Our X offset should be 0.14. Our Y offset should be 0.14. Let's change that blur to be 0.21 and leave that color selected and say OK. So now you can see we've got a nice gentle shadow making our paintbrush pop off just a little bit. And we can also tell that it's affecting the entire group when we look in the appearance panel, so because we know we've got multiple elements that are making up this shape. Let's do a Control S and save. And we're going to go ahead and edit a few effects. So let's go ahead and click on the Art Show text with our selection tool. And let's go to Effect and Apply Drop Shadow. So because we just did it, it's going to go ahead and grab what we just made. But that drop shadow is going to be a little bit more than we want to deal with. It's a little bit darker than we want for our actual poster. So with it still selected, let's go ahead and click on Drop Shadow in the Appearance panel. And let's go ahead and take that opacity down to about 10%, the blur down to 0.03, and we'll leave everything else okay and say OK. So now we just get a really nice, sharp, not as deep, but still a nice drop shadow. So now we're going to stylize some of that text with the warp effect. So with the text still selected, let's go to Add the Effect at the bottoms of the Appearance panel, so in Properties. So if you don't have Appearance open, you can always go to Properties, and let's go here to FX. And let's go ahead and choose Warp Rise from the menu. So we're going to come down here to Warp, and we want to go ahead and do Rise. And it's going to go ahead and I've got it preview. So if you notice, you can change how much that is going to warp and bend. So let's go ahead and leave that set at 0, but let's take that bend to about 15%. And hit tab, and you see it fits the Rainbow's ribbons pretty well now. So with that text still selected, let's go ahead and look at, let's say OK. So now you can see you can actually turn those effects on and off when you're looking in the appearance panel. So let's go ahead and turn it off again. Let's grab our text tool and change show into the word fest. So F-E-S-T. And let's make it all caps. And let's go ahead now and hit back to our selection tool. And if I turn my warp rise back on now, it's going to go ahead and fit, but you're going to notice that the fest isn't doing quite what we want it to do. So let's go ahead and double click on that warp rise and change that bend to about 11% instead. And say OK. And I'm going to use my arrow keys and kind of center it in the ribbon just a little bit better. All right, let's go ahead and do a file and or select and deselect, and a Control S to save what we've got so far. So we're going to go ahead and apply some other effects to other parts of the artwork to finish it. So let's go ahead and grab that selection tool and click that top banner shape to select it. So it's this one kind of yellow around it. We're going to click the stroke row in the appearance to select it. So we're over here in stroke. And we want to go ahead and add a new effect. So I want to go ahead and just have the row. Let's grab our effects button down here. And I want to do path offset, so I apply it only to the stroke. So let's come down here to path, which is the top middle section, and we want to do offset path. In offset path, let's go ahead and change that offset to -0.13 and click OK. And what it's going to do is going to change our stroke just a little bit. So with it still selected, let's click on that ArtFest text. Or you see how we moved that in just slightly is what it did. All right, let's grab the selection tool and grab that ArtFest text, and let's grab the green stroke row to select it. And in there, let's go ahead and add a new effect right there. Let's come down to the distort and transform in the middle of the top and go ahead and change it to transform. All right, with that open, we want horizontal move to be 0.013. Tab, vertical move should be 0.013. And let's go ahead and make the copies into 10. And what this is actually going to do, when I hit tab, is create kind of, if you turn your preview on and off, it should have made that green shadow happen. For some reason, it did not. So let's go ahead and try that one more time. All right, let's go to my stroke, my green. Oh, we want this one. This one should be white. Nope, should be this. Which one did we do it to? All right, let's try this green one. Let's try adding a new effect there. Let's go to distort and transform. Let's come down here to horizontal move. 0.0, stop. Escape. Turn that back to green. All right, escape. Let's move that transform to 0.013. The vertical to 0.013. And the copies into 10. Turn that preview on. There we go. And we can actually see that now. All right, so let's say hit OK on that one. So if I turn that off and on, I'm not even sure where that stroke is. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that one away. All right, so now I've got my stroke there. So let's go ahead and do an Control S and save what we've got. And in the appearance panel, let's click that right disclosure panel on the other one that says stroke. And let's go ahead and see transform effect is a subset of stroke. So we see that already. So let's do our select and our deselect and do a Control S and save. I'm going to go ahead and cut this a part of the tutorial so we can do Photoshop effects next.